Why were you fired? 5 example answers to help you respond well in your job interview. Hi, how are you? I'm Romulo Gutierrez. This is the Job Room channel. Today I'm going to give you 5 examples to help you answer this question well. A question that comes up in practically 75% of job interviews around the world. Why were you fired? In part A of the video, I'm going to tell you what you shouldn't say. It's not a good idea to say these things. It could get you rejected. And in part B of the video, I'll tell you what you can say confidently and without any fear. Let's get started. In part A, what shouldn't you say when asked why you were fired in a job interview? Point 1, don't blame other people. Even if you were let go because of an issue you had with a client, a coordinator, a supervisor, a director, or a supplier, avoid putting the blame on others, even if you share some of that blame. Ideally, you should mention other people when talking about your dismissal process. This can create, in the mind of the recruiter or the manager conducting the interview, a doubt about whether you are actually capable of taking responsibility. I'm not saying that the reason for your dismissal was you, or that it was a mistake you made, but it's not good to talk about someone else, especially when they're not there. So that's the first tip on what not to do. In a bit, in part B, I'll come back with tips on what to do. Second point, avoid saying you don't know the reason, okay? Sometimes it's true. I've been fired myself, and they didn't tell me why they let me go. So I ended up having some ideas just assuming the reason for my dismissal. But I never knew the real reason. But during the interview, that's really strange. As a recruiter, I ask, why were you fired? Look, I was fired. I worked there for 2 years and nobody even told me why. I really couldn't figure out the reason. That might be true in your professional life, but I strongly recommend you don't answer this way because the recruiter or the manager might think there's some reason you don't want to talk about. Third point you shouldn't mention. There are 4 points you shouldn't say, and then 5 tips to really nail your answer, which I'll cover in part B of the video, so stay tuned. Avoid talking about problems with your bosses, okay? With your coordinators, supervisors. Remember, coordinator and management positions are usually held by people with high standards. They're under pressure for targets, numbers, results, and deadlines. So, if you end up talking about problems with your boss, the person interviewing you might worry about whether you'll be able to handle the pressure from your next manager if you get hired. So, if your reason was some serious disagreement with your boss, I recommend you leave that out. You don't have to lie, but you can just choose not to mention it, okay? And the 4th mistake, and it's good for us to talk about these mistakes so you feel confident to understand part B of the video. Even if it's true, don't mention inefficiency with numbers. So let me give you an example. Look, just as an example, I was fired from a supermarket where I worked in merchandising because I couldn't meet the initial targets in the first 3 months. That, for instance, actually happened. If you had trouble reaching your goals and numbers, and that was the reason for your dismissal, I also strongly recommend that you don't mention it. Don't say that the reason for your firing was not delivering results, not delivering numbers. Yeah, I suggest you leave that out. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to answer. Not so you can lie or trick the recruiter. That's not cool, but we need to be wise about how we tell or explain our answers, especially with a complex question like this, okay? But I'll also give you some tips so you don't mention that you didn't hit your goals and numbers. Keep that to yourself. Now this is part B of the video, and I'm going to tell you what you should say, what you can answer with confidence. Before I go on, if you want to simulate a job interview or do some interview training, the phone number and WhatsApp are in the first comment of the video and also in the description, okay? It also appeared here on the screen. It's the international code 55 11 9 7 7 0 6 5 417. You can reach out and you'll be talking directly to me. Special low prices for subscribers of the Job Room channel, okay? And here, videos are never missing and never fail. There's a new video every Wednesday. Every Wednesday, there's a new video for you. The only thing I ask is Subscribe and leave your like so this project can really grow on YouTube and reach more people with free interview tips. Part B of the video. What can you talk about calmly? First point, don't be afraid to say you were fired. It happens to everyone, so don't lie. Oh, I quit. No, you can say you were fired. Getting fired happens to any professional in the world, in every field, everywhere. So don't be hesitant or afraid to say you were fired, okay? So your answer should always go like this. Before you talk about the reason for being fired, you should mention your achievements, accomplishments, and what you learned. And then you talk about the reason for being fired. So I'll give you an example. I was a sales manager at a tech company, just as an example, and then they asked me, why were you fired? Then I could say, look, I worked for a year and 2 months at CW Technologia. In that year and 2 months, I got a promotion. I started as a sales assistant and became the sales manager. During that time, I was able to hit targets in practically 10 of the months I worked. That was a really important achievement. So first I talk about the good things I learned, promotions I got, and then I mention the reason for being let go. And the reason for my dismissal was that there was a change in the company's upper management, and they started bringing in people they already trusted who had worked with them at other companies. So they decided to let me go. So I explain what I learned, what I accomplished, the numbers I achieved, and then I talk about the reason for my dismissal, okay? Suddenly, the reason for my dismissal was that I explained there was a change in management and they decided to hire new professionals. But maybe that wasn't actually the reason. The real reason was that for 3 months I didn't meet my targets. I didn't hit my goals. In that case, I can simply say that there was a restructuring in the company and as a result, they decided on some layoffs and I ended up being let go. So I give a more general reason. Every company is going through restructuring all the time, especially now in the age of artificial intelligence. So you can use that as an alibi answer, a wild card response in a card game. That works pretty well, okay? Yeah, in case you were. Now, 2 final tips here, and then a third bonus tip. If you were let go after a very short time at the company, like a month and a half, 2 months, use this restructuring and layoffs alibi, okay? You can play this wild card of layoffs and restructuring. So look, I was there for 2 months. In those 2 months, I learned how to develop with Power BI, got a lot of praise from clients, but the company hired me and then started restructuring the department and let me go. Let's suppose the reason for being let go wasn't even that. Maybe it was that, yeah, I didn't hit the numerical targets. I can mention that. Now, if you were let go after a longer period, say 1, 2, or 3 years with the company, it's also easier for you to justify, okay? You can explain the reasons. You can talk about what you delivered. Just avoid what I mentioned in part A of the video. Now, this is one of the tricky questions in an interview. I've put together a list of 10 here in a complete tutorial. Go check it out because it's really going to help you. Questions and answers. Excellent preparation. Take care and see you next time. Bye-bye.